Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host.
Hey, it's me. The US is still around, everybody. Hey, surprise, it's JT.
Yay, you're still there. Woohoo!
It's getting a little more touch and go every day, my friend, every day.
Yes, it is. I'll keep checking in on you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. I gotta get somebody to check in on me because nobody else is. Certainly not the government.
This really quiet party over a meth house is getting a little scary.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about the fish smell wafting through your apartment.
Yeah.
That's our fault.
Someone is cooking some awful like fish that's gone bad outside. It's really gross.
I bet you it was fish that was put in a microwave too long. Hopefully you're doing well, sir.
Oh, I'm alive still. Yep.
There it is.
You?
There it is. Well, I'm good. And then I'm going to read this case to everybody. And
yes. And then we're going to cry a little bit inside.
Well, possibly outside. We'll see.
That's true. That's true. But we're going to
Huh?
continue with our stories of our crimes of Nova Scotia, which this should have been someone stealing pots and pans and flowers. Like, good God, small towns. Like, what happened?
Everything.
Yeah.
So I want everyone to strap in because you need to get your 5-point harness out and just strap the hell in because this one's a doozy. And for my case, we're going to talk about the 2020 Nova Scotia attacks. And while that might sound like coordinated planned series of attacks by more than one person, it was one dude.
It was
just one.
One scumbag.
Yep. His name was Gabriel Wortman, and it happened on April 18th and 19th of 2020. And this case comes with a little bit of controversy in terms of the alert system used to warn people, but really it's just tragic overall. We'll hit a little bit on that, but for sure, right?
I'm making a joke now to start.
Yeah, right. So I'm not going to get deep into the history of Nova Scotia because why? But
I also did a little bit.
Yeah, you did. I do want people to know how small the place is to understand how big the attack was.
Yeah.
And the name's Latin for New Scotland. That's fun. It is the country's second most densely populated province and the second smallest province by area. And it has an area of 55,284 square kilometers, which is 21,345 square miles, and it includes Cape Breton Island and 3,800 other coastal islands. Now, the capital is Halifax, which has 45% of the province's population, which has been estimated in Q1 of 2023, which makes me sound a lot more business savvy than I actually am, to be around 1.037 million. So the density is 18.31 kilometers per kilometer, or 47.4 per square mile. Just to give you a comparison, San Jose, California alone has 1.036 million, which is pretty much the equivalent. And New York City has 8.622 million per estimates in 2020. So the place, while populated, is small.
Mm-hmm. And almost half of it lives in one city.
Right. And so I also read, which this was fun. I like this fact. It's the only province city area in North America that still recognizes Gaelic as an official language.
Nice.
Which I think is kind of cool.
I did not know that, actually.
So now we're going to get into the not so cool stuff.
Oh, let's go back to Gaelic.
I know. Yes. So our shooter, Gabriel Wortman, was born July 5th, 1968, and he grew up in Riverview, New Brunswick. He was raised as an only child, even though he had a brother. He didn't know about him until he was an adult because his brother had been given up for adoption when he was a newborn in 1970. I don't know why.
It could have been one of those things. Someone had a baby and they weren't ready for it and they weren't able to get an abortion or didn't want to for religious reasons or whatever.
What was interesting, though, is that they waited to give him up for adoption until they had Gabriel.
Oh, wait,
So
I missed that
his
part.
brother,
yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, so his brother spent years trying to track down his biological family and finally found them in 2010 Wortman invited his brother to the cottage he owned, and he was planning on having a birthday party for his dad in 2010 and thought it would work out. And it didn't. The happy reunion was not to be, and it really has all to do with Wortman and not even the estranged brother who came to celebrate. A fight broke out between Wortman and his dad over a property title, and the shooter decided he would threaten to kill his parents. Happy birthday.
Red flag.
Right? Yes. Needless to say, the police were called, and the brother decided he didn't want anything to do with the family. Like, I can imagine. Right. I can imagine it's hard enough to go to like a girlfriend's house and meeting the family and being like, nope. But
yeah.
Like, and I think many of us have been there, either a girlfriend or a boyfriend's house. But this was the family you looked for who knows how long. And I mean, the reality is that this all was bound to happen at some point because his uncle said he always hated and resented his father.
Wow.
But let's go back to Wortman's childhood briefly. His family moved around a lot when he was younger. His dad drove heavy equipment at Stello Steel in Hamilton, and then worked in different factories in the U.S., finally settling down and earning an income by buying and selling homes in the Moncton area. His family had a history of violence. Oh,
you don't say.
Yeah, his father, Paul, was raised in a violent family. His father was violent towards the kids. Then his father's father was also violent as well. He was described as a tyrant who brutalized his family. Wortman's father also had several incidents described where he abused his wife, Evelyn, and that Gabriel witnessed a lot of it. There were multiple incidents during his childhood that left a mark on Wortman. At one point, his dad drove him down a dirt road alone, and he was certain his dad was going to kill him. Another time, his dad handed him a gun and told him to shoot him. When Gabriel was younger than 10, his dad made him kill the family dog. And during the rampage that we're going to talk about, he shot several dogs.
Fuck this person right off the bat.
Sorry, trigger warning? That's too late. That's
just a little bit,
too late. But yes, Wortman attended Riverview High School and went to the University of New Brunswick in the late 1980s. At that point, we start seeing his wish to be RCMP. And this is the theme. You seem like you have like 5 different statements you want to make right now.
Oh, man. The police won't take you.
Right? He told his classmates he wanted to be there. The problem with this is that he was not exactly law-abiding, which you'd think he'd qualify. He sped everywhere he went. He shot air-powered rifles around town, and he used stolen siding to refinish his parents' home. So, you know,
shit.
It's just one of those things where we see a criminal interested in being in law enforcement for the power more than anything.
Yeah. If this was the United States, he'd be a sovereign citizen, probably.
Right. Yes. Yes. So as he, quote unquote, studied at the University of New Brunswick, he fancied himself a bit of mafia action. He got into the illegal business of smuggling cigarettes from the United States, and he sold them to students. In fact, he paid for school by smuggling the cigarettes, and he was super proud of the business that he had going on, and he did this for years.
And it was such a massive business. I don't know if it still is, but it was so massive back in the day and on the east coast of Canada. Like when we did the wrestling crimes, Dino Bravo was smuggling cigarettes, and the mob was smuggling cigarettes.
So here's my question. Why were they? Why was
taxes?
That
Taxes are very high in Canada, and they're very low in New York, and yada yada yada.
Got it.
Yes. Like, what does a pack of smokes cost in the States? Do you know? Like
$4, $5, maybe.
Yeah, and I think a pack of cigarettes here is almost $20 Canadian, but still, that's like what, $16 or whatever.
You add another $20 to $30 to that, and you have an entire carton.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why smuggling is
a
thing.
That checks out. All right. So just like every student does, he thought about switching his major. Unlike many students, he decided that he wanted to become a mortician. And honestly, that's fine. There's no shame in that. In fact, honestly, I thought about doing it as well. But he decided against it and went back to school to become a denturist. Now, what's a denturist, you might say? Well, I looked it up just for you all. They look at oral health, plan treatment, and make artificial dentures, including other removable oral appliances, and they fit those to the patient. So, if grandma's dentures come out because she blew candles on a cake, Gabriel didn't do a good job.
Or she just took hand-me-down from someone else.
That is not something you do. No to the sloppy seconds on dentures.
But I bet it happens.
Oh, I bet it does.
Especially, unfortunately, in the States.
Man, our next theme's Mississippi. So during this time, he would brag to people. Sorry, everybody in Mississippi. Parentheses page. During this time, he would brag to people that he had substances that would dissolve bodies. And can you imagine just having a conversation with somebody? So how you doing? I'm fine. I got something to dissolve a body.
Yeah. Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Can I ring the bell on speed dating next?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I have like a substance that'll make cats high because I'm growing catnip now, but like not dissolve bodies.
So listen, guys, if you want to fix Mike's got your stuff.
I've been thinking about if it grows well, I'm just going to throw pieces off the deck and see what happens.
I think you should.
It's 3 stories down.
You'd make so many cats happy.
Just have little fucking like drugged out cats.
So he actually graduated and he started his career right away. But, a tiger can't change their stripes, and he was drawn to illegal activities and those that broke the law. Many of his friends had lengthy criminal records, and I guess you're the company you keep. So here are some of the illegal activities. Using illegal radar detectors, burying various stolen items, selling different types of liquor on the black market, hiding large amounts of cash in the different homes and properties that he owned. He was also obsessed with conning people out of their money. Now, Wortman ran 2 offices called Atlantic Denture Clinic. One was in Dartmouth and one was in Halifax. And he also owned a total of 6 different properties. Wortman must have at least come off as someone who was happy, as his neighbors said as such. The problem was that he had issues with his wife. And that's quite the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So his issues circled around his intense jealousy and possessiveness, which, definitely an issue. He controlled everything. He controlled her movements, her income. He would also physically and verbally abuse her in front of crowds and other people. She herself worked as an assistant in his Dartmouth clinic. At one point, the uncle, they must have gotten a solid interview out of him because there were a lot of quotes from the uncle.
Yeah.
Saw him choking her and accusing her of cheating on him, but the police were never called.
Jesus.
Obviously, domestic violence is multifaceted. There's no blame. I'm just kind of stating.
Well, there's blame, but never for the victim.
No, right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's plenty of blame on him. So in 2013, at a bonfire in Portapique.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
Portapique. I think
I've never been there. It's a long ways away.
Yeah, we've covered something in Portapique, and I think I said it right that way.
Maybe.
Yeah, the only time I don't put a pronunciation. Yeah, please. You'll definitely let us know. One way or another, you'll let us know. So the shooter was drinking and threw his wife to the ground and started choking her in front of everyone at this bonfire. And if his wife ever looked like she was having too much fun at parties or other get-togethers, he would tell her that it was time to go, drive her home, take her away from the fun she was having. And he would also ensure his vehicle was parked behind hers so she couldn't leave.
What a fucking asshole.
Right. And they were together for almost 20 years.
That poor thing.
And in fact, I believe that they were common law wed. I think
even worse. So they weren't even married.
Yeah, I don't believe so. So in 2013, his wife knocked on a neighbor's door. She said that she was afraid of Wortman. The neighbor told her there were places she could go that would help her, but she was too afraid to leave. And the neighbor and her husband would call the police about the assaults, but the investigations would lead to nothing usually.
Because the cops would just believe the fucking asshole.
Right. So Gabriel apparently had another woman in his life. In fact, he had multiple affairs. But at some point, double standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
At some point, his wife figured it out, and Gabriel actually ended up blaming the neighbor for that. And he was pissed and started banging on the neighbor's front door, and then he started stalking her, and then he parked in front of her house and just stared at her. And it was so bad that the next door neighbors actually moved to get away from the shooter.
Oh my God. You just gotta love that. Like, that's when police are supposed to do something, and they don't do anything, so they fucking have to move. I mean, that's such a fucking huge thing to have to move your life.
Yes. Interestingly enough, a couple bought that house, and then 6 years later, they would be dead and their home would be burned to the ground.
Well, I
So,
guess it's good they moved.
well, yeah. Gabriel was married once before, and that ended in divorce in '01. There were no children then. Gabriel was known by many to be someone who drank a lot of alcohol, and his moods would jump quickly from friendly to aggressive to violent. And it was the drinking that seemed to bring this out.
Yeah. And if you're an angry drunk, don't fucking drink.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Do it. Wortman would also be sober for months at a time, but then he'd start drinking again. So there was these periods of like, oh, it's fine, and then
yeah, that's a total like right there. That means you shouldn't drink.
Right.
If you can go sober for a little bit and then you just fall off the fucking deep end and you start beating people and everything, yeah, you are an alcoholic and you need to stop.
Yes.
Yes.
So I want to summarize just a few things that may be attributed to him that were reported, etc. In 2001, there was a report of an assault on a 15-year-old boy. In 2010, he made those death threats towards his parents. In 2011, an anonymous tip was sent to RCMP saying the shooter had a large stash of guns and that he mentioned wanting to kill a cop. In 2013, there was a report of a violent attack on a spouse and a weapons complaint. Nothing resulted in charges. At some point, he bought a building with plans to build a marijuana grow operation in a bunker, but it didn't happen because he ended up finding mold there. Honestly, I wish it would have happened because maybe he would have chilled the hell out.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
So the other interesting thing, Gabriel kept a loaded pistol in his pillow located in the apartment above the clinic that he had. And it probably goes without saying, but he also hated paying taxes, so he did a lot of under-the-table work for cash.
This guy would be a sovereign citizen if he was in the States. Holy shit.
Absolutely. So at the time or around the time of the rampage, his estate was worth over $1.2 million. But nobody really knows because they don't know how much cash he actually hid away because he did hide money. He lived a lavish lifestyle. He bought expensive motorcycles, cars, boats, hosted fancy parties, went on vacations, owned a condo in the Dominican Republic and a beach log home in Portapic, which is the cottage I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
In 2010, he bought a tree trimming company from someone who had a long criminal record. It was never really clear what this company actually did. So,
yeah.
He was also very paranoid. He claimed that there were break-in attempts and break-ins at his properties. He put security cameras up that covered every square inch of all of his properties, and he complained that the police weren't doing their jobs. And then on top of the paranoia and everything else, COVID happened.
Yeah.
And his paranoia grew. And he was worried about a financial crisis because of it. And at one of his properties, police discovered hundreds of dollars in a fireproof canister. So he very much, yeah. I mean, you're talking, this is sovereign citizen, survivalist type stuff. So
I mean, it doesn't sound total survivalist because he's definitely he's in the community still. Whereas like sovereign citizens are usually still in the community. They just claim they don't belong to that community kind of thing.
True. So that's a little bit about Gabriel. So let's move on to the actual event. I say event, the shooting, the mass shooting.
Yes, the awful mass shooting.
My governor once called a mass shooting an event, and I wanted to. I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to be charged. So the attack started on April 18th. This would stretch into the 19th and would eventually extend to 16 crime scenes with 22 dead and 3 injured.
Yeah, so it's really, really awful.
So he and his wife were celebrating their anniversary. They were at their property they called the Warehouse, and this was in Portapic. They were having a good time, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic, so everyone was pretty much quarantined. They were taking selfies, FaceTiming with friends. Everything was fine. They began walking home to their cottage, which was kind of off, it was like down a path from this warehouse. This was their permanent residence. Now, I don't know what happened because he then began... The story goes, they were having a good time. They walked to the cottage, and then he started pouring gasoline inside the cottage, as well as the path to the warehouse. And then he lit it on fire. His wife, he decided to smash his wife's phone so she couldn't call 911, and he didn't have a cell phone of his own. He assaulted and he bound her. She eventually got free and escaped into the woods where she would be safe until the next morning, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
He loaded his replica RCMP cruiser with his firearms and he began his attack. So we're going to go through this kind of as a timeline because I think that's probably just the easiest way to do this. So Saturday, April 18th. Keep in mind, there were 13 victims found dead at 7 different locations. We will make sure to give all the victims a name after discussing the timeline because I think that's really important. I can't go into all of their stories, but I can give their names. So 10:01 p.m., police receive a 911 call about a shooting in rural Portapique, Nova Scotia. 10:26, officers arrive and find bodies on the roads and in homes, as well as buildings on fire. A surviving gunshot victim said that the shooter was driving a police cruiser. 10:35, a witness sees a vehicle believed to be the gunman's leaving Portapique through a field. 11:12, the gunman arrives at an industrial area in Daybert, 26 kilometers from the scene of the initial shootings. 11:32 p.m., Nova Scotia RCMP announced on Twitter that they are responding to a firearms complaint in Portapique and ask people to avoid the area and lock their doors.
A complaint.
Herein lies the issue. Multiple people have died, buildings are on fire, and it's a firearms complaint.
Yeah.
Now, if they would have updated this, that would have been great.
That definitely a failure.
Yeah, they issued no public alert or additional statement on Twitter for 8 hours. Nothing.
Also, Canada has like a natural disaster alert system that you're like everyone's phones, TVs, everything will start blaring out noise. Send out a fucking emergency alert on that. Every phone in the province would have gone off. Like they would have known.
We have the technology.
Yeah.
Sunday. So now we're into Sunday, April 19th. 5:43 a.m. The gunman leaves Daybert before daybreak. 6:29. He's seen on video entering Wentworth area, 60 kilometers north of Portapique. He heads to a home on Hunter Road where he kills 2 men and a woman. He remains at the victim's home for a while. At the same time, common-law spouse comes out of hiding, calls 911, tells police that Wortman's assaulted her before the killing rampage. He has multiple firearms. He's wearing an authentic RCMP uniform, and he's driving a replica vehicle.
And it was a good replica. It was really impressive, unfortunately.
It was, because he had, and I think we talk about this briefly later, but he bought a retired vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Which they strip everything, and then he added everything back.
Yeah, and it's not hard because it was one of back then everyone was using the was it a Ford Police Interceptor or whatever it was? Like I mean, that's just all police cars at that time were that car.
Nice to know that that's worldwide.
Oh yeah.
At least between our two countries.
Oh, definitely.
So 8:02 a.m. RCMP saying on Twitter the Portapique situation involves an active shooter. So finally.
Yeah.
8:54, RCMP released photo of gunman on Twitter. Call him armed and dangerous. 9:43, gunman spotted at Highway 4 and Highway 426. He kills a woman walking along the highway in the Wentworth Valley area. 9:48, police say gunman drives south to a home on Highway 4 in Glenholm area. Residents call 911 saying they know the shooter. They don't answer the door, and he eventually leaves. That's horrifying.
So lucky. Yeah.
9:57, video of the gunman is he's driving east on Daybert. 10:04, RCMP tweet people should avoid Highway 4 in Glenholm. 10:08, Wortman arrives in Daybert, pulls over a car, kills the driver, continues along Highway 4, and does the same to a second driver because he's in a police car.
Yeah.
10:16 to 10:20, the gunman captured on video passing through Truro, takes Highway 2 to Millbrook. 10:17, police share via Twitter for the first time that the gunman may be driving a vehicle that looks like an RCMP cruiser and is wearing what seems to be an RCMP uniform.
Yeah.
I just want to say 10:17 a.m. is when they mentioned this. His wife is able to escape. 6:29 a.m. She tells them all this.
Yeah.
2 people die because he's in a cop car.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put out this concept.
But
It's
on
wild.
Twitter.
Well, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't on Twitter. A lot of people that aren't on social media. Are you not going to warn the elderly? Like,
yeah, and I mean, even pre-Elon, not everybody was on Twitter.
Pre-lawn.
Pre-lawn. I like that. That's a good pre-lawn. Yes.
That's for the cocaine in space.
So 10:25 a.m. he stops at Millbrook Fire Station. He gets out of his vehicle. He removes his jacket. He puts on a reflective vest. He continues south on Highway 2 through Hilden. 10:32 he's seen on video at an Esso station. 10:49 police say RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson and Constable Chad Morrison were working in Enfield at the time. The gunman pulled up alongside them. He shot Morrison, not fatally. He heads south on Highway 2 and collides head-on with Stevenson. He fatally shoots Stevenson and takes her weapon. A bystander arrived to help, but is also killed by Wortman's gun, and then he takes that person's silver SUV. At 11:06, RCMP tweet, again, gunman traveling South Highway 102 from Brookfield arrives at a home of a female acquaintance. He then kills her and leaves, driving her Mazda 3. At 11:23, gunman exits the highway, stops at Irving Big Stop gas station, 100 kilometers south of Portapique.
It's still amazing, like driving 100 kilometers in such a small province.
It just so happened that RCMP had tactical officers that were refueling at the same time, and they encountered him, and Wortman was shot dead by police at 11:26 a.m. So the shooter knew some of the victims, and police believe that the victims he knew were killed over various disputes. He just had an axe to grind. Here are the victims. Joy Bond, 70 years old. Peter Bond, 74 years old. Gina Goulet, 54 years old. Elizabeth Joanne Thomas, 59 years old. John Joseph Zoll, 69 years old. Corey Ellison, 42 years old. Don Madden. Frank Glenchen. Aaron Tuck, 45. Jolene Oliver, 40. Emily Tuck, 17. Sean McLeod, 44. Alana Jenkins, 36. Tom Bagley, 70. Lisa McCauley, 49. Constable Heidi Stevenson, 48. Heather O'Brien, 55. Kristen Batten, or Baton, 33. Greg Blair, 45. Jamie Blair, 40. Joseph Joe Weber, 36. Lillian Campbell Hyslop, 65.
So awful. So many people.
It's so many people, and for that many people there's an infinite number of other people that were affected in the long term.
Oh yeah, there's lots of injuries too.
Yeah, so all who knew Wortman knew that he had a fascination with police memorabilia, including cruisers, equipment, and uniforms. He wanted to be like police. He idolized officers. Well, no, that's not it. It's because he thought he was better than them, right?
Yeah.
And
what he wanted is he wanted power.
Yep.
Over people.
Absolutely.
Because he was the kind of person who thrived on overpowering people. Hence, strangling his common law wife, right?
Yeah, that control, right?
Yeah.
So he had multiple decommissioned police cars, authentic uniforms, as well as weapons and other police equipment. He owned a search and rescue Zodiac, also a high-speed inflatable boat. He purchased the vehicles through the company that he owned, and if he would have used his own name at auctions, government run, his 2001 assault conviction would have prevented him from purchasing the cruisers, but he didn't. He used that company, right, the tree trimming company, to buy them.
You should almost have to use your name.
Yep. Also, bulletins put out about him in 2011 would have also prevented him from getting the vehicles. His biggest prized possession was a 2017 police cruiser replica. Now, he hid the cruiser in the warehouse on property that he owned, hidden out of view. It was authentic. It was complete with radar, emergency lights, communications radio. It was just the box, non-working. Authentic RCMP decals on the outside of the vehicle. He bought it at a federal government auction, June 27th, 2019, for almost $11,000. Now, like I mentioned before, when he got the vehicle, it was plain white. Everything was taken out of it, so he definitely piecemealed it together.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Right. And his excuse for fixing the cars up was that he was going to use them in parades.
You still can't drive around a police car if you're not a police officer without getting arrested.
Right. So he bought a 2013 Ford Taurus for almost $3,000 in July of 2013. That was a cruiser. He kept it parked at his Dartmouth clinic at the time of the shooting. 2 more cruisers were found burned at his properties in Portapic. All vehicle accessories purchased for the cruisers were purchased online, many from Amazon. Thanks, Bezos. Now, just a few more things of note. I know that it's been a marathon. The shooter had 2 handguns with laser sights. He had 2 crates of hand grenades he stored at one of his properties that he got from the United States.
Those are definitely illegal here.
Yep. Sorry about that. The Colt carbine rifle was found to come from a gun shop in California. Sorry about that as well. 2 semi-auto handguns were from a gun shop in Maine. Getting tired of saying sorry.
Yeah, he's definitely illegally transporting guns here.
Right. So Sturm Ruger Mini 14 rifle came from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Can't be sorry about that. Firearms all illegally obtained as he didn't have a firearms license, and he's never had a firearms license.
And it makes sense why his guns were never taken from him, because they didn't take his gun license when he had a record, because he didn't have a gun license.
Didn't have one.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
He had at least 5 high-capacity magazines, which held 30 to 40 rounds each, found on his vehicle.
Absolutely illegal here?
Yep. Probably smuggled in through the U.S. Sorry again. I'm starting to feel Canadian saying sorry so much. Witnesses said the shooter had a hidden compartment under a workbench in a warehouse that contained a high-powered rifle. And 2 people who personally knew the shooter told police he bought $800 worth of gasoline before the rampage and bought propane bottles. So Gabriel Wortman is a real asshole.
Yes.
For so many reasons. So that's the Nova Scotia attack. And I know the timeline was probably a bit difficult to hear or listen to, but honestly, there was so much happening all at the same time. That is the best way to talk about it.
Yeah.
It is by far it's one of the longest active shooting incidents or mass shooting incidents that I've ever covered.
Yeah, and it's the worst mass shooting incident, I think, in Canada now.
I'm not surprised. I mean, this is bad, even by U.S. standards.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. Now, it's one of the few that you have.
Yes,
but it's rough. I mean, this is bad, and every single one of them is bad. I don't want to say one's worse than the other, but in terms of the folks whose lives he destroyed, and families and stuff, I mean, it's just terrible. And a lot of this stuff, I feel like, could have been stopped.
Oh yeah,
many times, and you give him that layer of invincibility, and he's able to buy cop cars, and there we go. So that would be the Nova Scotia attacks of 2020.
Don't be a wart on the ass of Nova Scotia.
Don't be a wart, man.
Exactly.
That's the moral of the story. Don't be a wart, man.
Don't be a wart, man. Oi. Well, that was a downer of an episode, but that's what happens when you've got a mass shooting, because they fucking suck and they need to stop.
Terrible.
Maybe one day they'll stop. I hope they'll stop.
Maybe.
But at least it's not as prevalent here as, unfortunately, it is in your fine country.
We're at like 183 in 101 or 102 days.
Yeah, we haven't had that since the 1800s. I feel bad for you.
I'm not in politics. All I can do is tweet out my little tweets.
Yeah.
I obviously can march. I obviously can push. I obviously can call people, and I do. But there's a piece. I think there's a piece of most Americans where there's kind of this helpless feeling, where, and we've seen this even after the Tennessee shooting, where 6 people died and 3 of them like 9 years old. Instead of listening to 3 government representatives protesting or at least asking for change, they expelled them because they didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's a very dangerous precedent to set. So,
yes, it's how dictatorships start.
yep, it's a there's a hopeless feeling there, but honestly, by them doing that, they put those guys on a pedestal, rightfully so,
Yep.
and thousands of people immediately came out to protest.
Yes.
They did not
Children.
invade. Right. They did not invade. They went through the metal detectors. They did what they were supposed to do. Yes, they were
Yes.
loud, but that's how that works. And yes, Gen Z is going to take this world by storm. I said this afternoon. You were in the chat. Millennials are the missed generation, the skipped generation, and I hope Gen Z picks up the baton from the people who finally retire, and I hope that they do something fantastic because right now we're in trouble.
Yes, maybe they can take the baton and beat the guns out of some of the bad people's hands.
just really slowly and carefully replace the gun with the baton.
Batons are very dangerous still, but not as dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, batons don't have 30 to 50 rounds or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
a range of, a couple miles out sometimes.
right? Like something
You're a really good
terrible
shot.
happened. Something terrible, I mean, really bad happened, I think, in the UK where a guy had tried to literally, I think, decapitate a police officer, but it was with a knife, and
Yeah.
he ended up getting a slash and possibly kind of cut on the throat. And those people who are gun advocates, not all, I don't want to say all, but
Yeah.
they're very much like, see what a knife can do. And I'm like, yeah. And if he would have had like freaking a semi-automatic rifle or whatever, it would have been like, it's just
Fuck, if he had a revolver.
right. Yeah. I mean,
6 shots. Boom.
I can't.
Nope.
The counter arguments are yep. Doesn't matter. Here we are.
Here we go.
This is the end of the episode.
Thanks so much for tuning into Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you would like to support the show, head to patreon.com/Brew Crime now. The money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes, including our brewery episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters. Jay is Rad, Three Beers In Podcast, The Faves of Our Lives, and True Crime Nana.
Don't be a wart, man.
Yes. All cases on Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast. You ready to go?
I sure am. I'll let you intro us. Yay.
Yay.
Cape Breton. Breton? Ooh. Oh, cool. And one moment, I'm looking back for the time when she says, there we go. Stop in Enfield, 100 kilometers. I probably just said that twice. Merp.